Hi everyone. Hi everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Welcome to another live ukulele lesson with me, Matt Stead. In today's video, we're going to really drill down into chords. What actually is a chord? We're going to go into a lot of detail. It's going to be quite theory heavy today, but that's going to really set you up for some fun in the next live lesson. As with all of my live lessons and canacapillas and whatnot, there's always a bit of buffering at the start. So just whilst we welcome everyone and get started, I'll just play a bit of a piece of music for you, and then I'll explain how it's all going to work, and we'll crack on from there. So here we go. I'll just play a little bit of Hawaiian for you. There we go, something just nice and simple. Interestingly, that entire piece of music was only built on two chords, a C chord and a G7, as you get for a lot of Hawaiian music. If anyone's interested, it's a lovely place called Hei'ea, which is named after a surfing district on the island of Oahu in Hawaii. And this is from Jeff's new book, Jeff Peterson, Graded Repertoire for Ukulele. Just absolutely brilliant. So always like to start with a little bit of music to get us in the mood and get us going. So hope you're all doing well. Let us know how you're getting on. Now, the important thing for me today is that you guys ask loads and loads of questions, because I'm going to go quite theory heavy today, as I mentioned, and the kind of best thing to do is to soak up as much as you can and then just ask questions as you go along on anything you're not sure of. It really helps me as well, because sometimes I might just forget to tell you something really important, and it might just kind of set my mind going again. And also lots of people might be thinking the same thing, but they're too afraid to ask. So join in the live feed, hang out there and ask loads and loads of questions as we go. And as I say, buffering will settle down in 5 minutes or so. You can always refresh your browser if it's too bad. Now, the reason I wanted to do this at this point, we have done this lesson before a long time ago, but I thought it's a really good time because we've had lots and lots of new members recently to Canacapilla and to the live lessons. And at Canacapilla, I'm always saying, okay, so we're in a particular key, say the key of C, and therefore these are the chords that are going to come up in that key. And we always just take that as given, right? These are the chords that are in the key of C, these are the chords that are in the key of G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But sometimes it's really good to dig into the why. Why is there a C major chord? What's the difference between a major and a minor chord? Why is the next one a minor chord? Why is there a 7th chord and there's also a major 7th chord? What's the difference? So all these kind of things, they really help your understanding of music. And I'm a real strong believer in empowering people, okay? So none of this, it drives me mad when you get teachers that just try and show off, like, I know this, and I know this, and I know this. Really, it's all about empowering you. So if I can demystify some of this stuff, it's going to help you to understand it. It's going to make your musical journey much more enjoyable, and you'll be able to get more out of playing ukulele, which is really important. Now, if you haven't done already, you can download the worksheets. I'll bring loads up on screen. In fact, today's going to work a lot by me using my iPad to bring up these sheets on screen and to draw all over them. And what I'll do is I'll post up on the Facebook page some of the notes afterwards that we do, because there's bound to be lots of notes. If you want to download them in the meantime, there's a link in the description, and there's also a link in the comments as well. Hi Jude, hi Charlene. Yeah, I know, it drives me mad. It's a funny time of year at the moment because you American guys, those from America, you guys are in daylight savings already, aren't you? And we don't go back until the end of next week. So there's always that kind of weird no man's land in between where our time, we've just got used to the time sync and then it all changes again. But we'll be back to normal soon, don't you worry. Okay, it's lovely here. It really feels like spring's on its way now, of daylight savings on its way. My first chiff chaff, I can hear it. You might even be able to hear it outside. It goes chiff chaff chiff. You might hear it in the background. But the first chiff chaffs have arrived, which is a nice sign of spring. Okay, right, let's dig into it right from the start. So, as I'm always going on in Canacapilla, as I say, we always think about the chord families being like the palette that a composer would use to make a piece of music, whether it be a melody or chords. And we're mostly talking about chords when we're doing them in Canacapilla. And I'll often say, like, we have these chords over here. In a chord family, we have a major chord, then a minor, a major, a minor, and then a diminished. So let's actually dig into how that comes about. And it all comes back to scales. Now, basically, all chords are built from a major or a minor key. And I like to concentrate on major key first, and I'll show you a trick later on, if I remember, where you can apply this to the relative minor anyway. So we take a key such as C major, which is the example here, and the chords that are built, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chords, are just built by taking a note. Let's bring on my iPad version. That's on the screen for a second here. So we take a note such as, here we go. Here's the first example. We take a note like this C here. Then what we do is we skip over a note and we play the next one here. We skip over another note and we play the next one. And that is how our chords are built. So the first chord in the key of C, the 1 chord, is the notes C, E, and G. We've just played one, skipped, played one, skipped. Okay, let's just bring me back in for a second. So the first chord in the key of C is C, C major. And on our uke, if we play our C major, it makes sense, right? Everyone's ready, steady. Love it, guys. Love it, love it. So here we have our C major chord. Well, let's have a look at the notes that make it up. We've got a low C here. We've got an E here. We've got a G up the top here. And because we've got 4 strings on our ukulele and most basic chords are built with 3 notes, we have to repeat a note. So we repeat another C. It's the same as this one, but an octave higher. C in G gives us a C major chord. Okay. Then we build the next chord along in the key of C. We do exactly the same thing. Let's have a look. So if we come in here to the 2 chord, I've got my C major scale here written out from left to right, going in this direction. And this time I start on the 2nd chord degree because we're building the 2 chord. I skip a note and I play the next one. I skip a note and I play the next one. So the 2 chord in the key of C, the next chord along is D, F and A, 3 notes again. And again, if we come back to our chord shape, we know a D minor looks like this. Let's check the notes. I'll talk to you about why it's a minor in a second. But just to prove that it works, here's the D note. Here's the F note down here. Here's the A note up here at the top. And again, we need to repeat a note. So when we play this form of D minor, we repeat an A note. So D, F and A makes D minor. Okay, hopefully that's making sense so far. Now, you might wonder, why was the first chord a major chord? The first chord was a C major, wasn't it? And the next chord was a C minor. Well, it all comes back to something called intervals, or the space between notes. If I write out every note that we can play in the Western world, in fact, I won't write out every note because it'll take forever, but let's just do a selection of notes in order that we can play in the Western world, look like this. I could keep going. Okay, so this is called the chromatic scale. It's all the notes that we can make. Well, do you remember our first chord was C, E, and G? Those were the notes that made it up. Well, it's all about the distance between these first two notes. If we look here, we have two whole step. There's loads of kind of terminology in music that is really good to demystify. It's not anything fancy pants. A whole step just means two notes, a gap of two notes, basically. All right. A half step would be a gap like that, which is just one note. So when you have this whole step, C to E, we call that a major third. All right. And that's why the one chord is a C major. If we have a look at the next chord, the notes were D, F, and A for D minor. Well, if we look at the gap between D to F, look here, we've got only 1.5 steps, and we call that minor third. And that's why the second chord is a D minor and the first one's a C major. All right, it's as simple as that. And basically, we can just build all of the chords just like that. I'll show you. We'll go for a few more. It's quite good fun once you get into it. Let's bring my sheets up again. There we go. Let me just bring that up. There we go. Fantastic. Okay, so the three chord in the key of C starts from E, and we do exactly the same process. E, skip one, G, skip one, B. That gives us the notes E, G, and B, and that gives us an E minor chord. And again, E, G, and B, if I was to finger an E minor chord, okay, let's find the E note. There's an E up here. There's a G here. There's a B here. And we've also got a repeat of this G up here. So basically, when we play chords on a ukulele, all we're doing really, say if we want to play an E minor chord, is thinking, where can I find a combination of an E, G, and B? And sometimes you can play these chords in different places. It's quite interesting. You can find a different combination, which can be really fantastic. Okay, but that's how every single chord in a key is built. We play a note, we skip one, we play the next one, and we skip one. It's really fascinating. And you end up with this. If I come back to my sheets here, this is all on your first sheets. Let me bring it up. When you do that and you extrapolate all of those chords, we end up with what we call the diatonic chords, or as Shell misread it earlier, as the platonic chords. I like that. It makes sense. They're friendly. And these are the natural chords that come up in any key. And they always follow this order. The first is a major, second is a minor, third is a minor, fourth a major, fifth a major, sixth a minor, and then the seventh is something unusual. It's called a diminished chord. Okay, so a diminished chord. That's because it's a bit of an interesting one, the diminished chords. Let me talk about chord formulas for a minute. That would probably be the best way to explain that. So I'm going to bring up another blank page for a second. As I say, I'll make all these notes available afterwards on Facebook if anyone's interested. So we can think of a chord. Let's think of a major chord. We can think of it as numbers as well. And a major chord is the first, the third, and the fifth chord of a key. So if I was to do the key of C, like this, a major chord, C major would be 1, 3, and 5 like that. A minor we can think of it as having that minor third that I mentioned. That can be written as a flat 3, like that, a B3. So that just means instead of being C, E and G, a minor chord is C, E flat and G. That's the only difference between a major and a minor. A diminished chord is a little bit weird. The 7th chord in any key is a diminished chord. And a diminished chord has the flatted 3, but also a flatted 5th. So C diminished is C, E flat and G flat. It's that simple. And diminished chords are those kind of really kind of jazzy sounding chords. I think of them as super jazzy. Something like this would be a diminished chord. In fact, the B diminished one that comes up in the key of C looks like that. And that gives you these palette of chords. So when we're talking in Canacapilla about the 1, the 2, and the 3, and the 4 chords, now you know how they're built. They're that simple. You just take a note and skip one and add it on. And each of those different natural chords qualities give you a different feel. So major chords are the ones that are bouncy and upbeat. C, F, and G, for example. Your minor chords are the ones that sound melancholic or dark, right? They've got that kind of darkness about them, like this. Okay, cool. Karen's just asking a question. She's just asking, can we see your writing? Is it not showing up on the screen when I go to the whiteboard, Karen? Let me know if it's not showing up. Fingers crossed it should be. Can you see the scribbles there all over the page when I do that, Karen? Fingers crossed we can. Let me know if it's not showing up for any reason, and I'll bring it on screen if I can. Can't think why I wouldn't, but yeah. Okay. Oh, maybe was it just whilst I was talking about it properly? That's all it was. Yeah, cool. And hi, Lisa, by the way. Hope you're doing well. Okay, so major chords happy sounding, minor chords are, oh, that's weird. Minor chords are sad sounding. Not seeing it here. Oh, that's strange. So when I do this, guys, can you see my whiteboard at all? Is it showing up? Oh, it's showing up now. Oh, that's weird. I wonder whether the sound isn't syncing up with the video or something. Yeah. Oh well, hopefully it's working now. Cool. Okay, so we've got major and minor, and the diminished chords are kind of those slightly sort of jazzy sounding chords, as I say. And composers will use those for particular things. So if we have a look at, we did last time we were all together, we worked out that song by Taylor Swift called Hours, didn't we? Which is really lovely. And that had a major C major, followed by an A minor, followed by an F. It would sound like this. Elevator buttons in the morning, yeah. Stranger silence makes me want to take the stairs. Well, Taylor's using those notes for particular purposes. If she didn't include that minor chord in, it would almost sound too happy. If I just go from C to G. Elevator buttons and morning air. Sounds too happy, right? Stranger silence makes me want to take the stairs. So by having that minor chord in there, it adds that touch of sadness. Elevator buttons and morning air. Stranger silence makes me want to take the stairs. What about that diminished chord? Well, the diminished chord, we tend to use it in a jazz vamp. You get this nice kind of feel. So we could do a C sharp diminished here, D minor, G7. Here's the diminished chord. Major, diminished, minor. So each of them has a different function, basically. So that's how we come up with all our natural chords in any key. That's where the palette comes together. Now, what about those chords like minor sevenths and major sevenths? Those longer chords, what are those? Well, it really is as simple as you would imagine. Let me come back to my sheets again. Go, just bring this one up. Fantastic. Okay. I think I can see what's happening, guys, in terms of the writing not showing up. I think what's happened is for some of you the audio's gone out of sync with the writing, so the writing's appearing, but it's a little bit late. So if that happens, just refresh your browser, and it should join up together again. So. Yeah, me too, Jude. They're really useful diminished chords. Really nice for linking up pieces of music and passages of music as well, which is really great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the sheets again, and then, oh, didn't mean to draw. Let me just get rid of that. There we go. And I'm just going to go on to the next page along. There we go. Fantastic. Okay, so in your sheets, we've got the description of why a major, minor or diminished, which is what I was just talking about, the difference between that flat third and whatnot. For some reason, I've printed off that sheet twice in your sheets, but yeah. Now, let's have a look at 4-part chords. So if you ever get a chord such as a minor seventh or a major seventh, that's a 4-part chord. We've added a note. But exactly the same process, it really is this simple, exactly the same process applies. So to get all the 4-part chords in any key, all we have to do is skip one further. So remember, in the key of C, the one chord was C, E and G. That was our C major chord, right? C major, you can just think of that as. Well, what we do if we want to play a 4-part chord is we just skip one more. So we would add a B note to that chord. And that creates what we call a major 7th chord. So any major 7th chord is just a normal major triad. That just means the C, E and G with the 7th note of the scale added. It really is that simple. Cool, right? We can test that again. I think it's really good to play some of these. If I was to finger this chord, this is a C major chord. I've got a C, an E, and a G. That's my major triad. And then, rather than repeating a note, because it's a 4-part chord, we need another note. Here's the 7th note in the key of C. C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Here's a B note here. Isn't that lovely? Now, major 7th chords, they have a slightly kind of more wistful, slightly more unresolved. And what I think of it as is a more rich quality to it. That extra note, it sounds super sweet. Still has that major quality because we have that 1, 3, 5. But by adding that 7th to it, oh, it's really sweet, isn't it? And let's hear the difference. C major, quite straightforward sounding. C major 7th, much more lush, isn't it? Really lovely like that. And you could do that to create to get all of the 4-part chords in any key. So for instance, in the key of C, the next 4-part chord, let's have a look and build it. We would start from D because that's the 2nd note in the key of C. We would skip one, F, skip another A, and that would be our D minor, right? That's our D minor chords, D, F, and A, because we just saw that. And the reason it's a minor is because that gap there is a minor 3rd. Well, what do? We just skip another note and we add it. And that creates a D minor 7 now. We've literally just taken a D minor and we've added the 7th onto it. Really cool, right? Now, because this one is D rather than C, the distance between here and here we call a flat 7. In the key of D, this note here, the 7th note in the key of D, hurts people's brains this bit, don't sweat it too much. But it just means that when we write them out as a formula, we call that 7th note a flat 7. But notice the important thing is we've just skipped a note and added another to create that note, and that gives us a D minor 7. We can do that in our uke. If we just finger the D minor we did earlier, D, F, A at the top here, I like to swap those fingers around. And instead of repeating an A, we add that C note down. We get a D minor 7, isn't that lovely? Okay. Now these chords, by adding the 7th note, as I say, they make it sound much more rich. And what I love to do is give you an example. So that Taylor Swift song I was just banging on about a minute ago went C, A minor, and F. Now if I was to play that as C major 7, A minor 7, F major 7, turn them all into 7ths, it has a totally different, richer sound. Isn't that lovely? Now that's really nice, but it sounds a little bit jazzy. So the reason why composers will often just use more straightforward chords is they sound more pop-tastic and straightforward to our ears, whereas jazz musicians will quite often go for those major 7ths. It also gives soloists a chance because a lot of solo players, they use the chord tones to solo from, and it gives them more notes that they can play, so it can be quite useful for that. That's why you get a lot of those in jazz, which is quite interesting. Now that's, if we extrapolated that out and we did all the 4-part chords, let's go back to the sheet and look at what that gives us. So these, again, diatonic just means the natural chords that come up in any key. And here we go, if I make this big, here are the natural diatonic chords that come up in the key of C. So I've got a C major 7, just a C major with the 7 on, D minor 7, D minor with the 7th on, E minor 7, E minor with the 7th on, so on and so forth, F major 7, F major with the 7th on. Now this one's interesting. When you skip notes and you create chords like in this manner, the 5th chord is really interesting in any key. I'm going to go back a little bit to in the sheets, and I'm going to go to where in your sheets it creates the 5 chord. It's back here. Go. Let's just put this on the screen. Okay. Fantastic. Let me know if there's any questions so far as well, guys. So here we are, we're building the 5 chord 4-part in the key of C. We start from G because that's the chord we're building. We skip one, that gives us B. We skip another, that gives us D. And we skip another, and that gives us F. Now you might think, why is that called a G7? Or I'm going to tell you it's called G dominant 7. That's the fancy pants name for it. Okay. The reason is all because of this note, and we have to compare it to its home key to see what's going on here. So try and just soak this in for a minute, and then I'm going to bring you into another sheet. Let me bring you into here. And I'm going to write out the key of G major now. You can always find these, if you're not sure of the notes in a key, you can always find them on Google, or you can look it up in my theory book, anything like that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now the reason we call this one a G dominant chord is that we have these notes here. Okay, G, B, D, and E. But look at that 7th. In the key of G, the 7th note should be an F sharp, but we had an F note. So we call that a 1, a flat 3, a 5, and a flat 7. And that's really important. That flatted 7th note gives it a really unresolved bluesy kind of feel. It feels totally different from a major 7th. And a dominant 7th, that 5th chord in any key, it's all about creating tension that makes you want to go back to the 1 chord. So for example, if I was to play a G7, it wants to go back to a C, the 1 chord in the key of C. Okay, isn't that lovely? And it's all to do with certain notes wanting to resolve to another one. So this F note in the G7 chord, this one here, it loves going to the E note in the C chord. When we kind of strum it, it's kind of buried a bit. But you get this lovely feel of resolution. It's quite nice because that B note in a G7 chord as well, this one, it's only a half step away from that C, so we get that double feel of resolution. And dominant chords are really important in music. Whole pieces of music have been built off the relationship between the dominant chord and the one chord. Tonic, we call the one chord if we get going on fancy pants. I always like to use the example of the Four Seasons by Vivaldi, Spring from the Four Seasons. It just goes between, in fact, let's do it in a key of C. Da 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 da. Ba ba da ba 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 da ba 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 da ba ba. Believe it or not, the whole of the spring movement from the Four Seasons from Vivaldi is just built on the relationship between the 1 and 5 chord. That's really, really important. So when we go back to those diatonic chords, let me bring it up again in just a second. Here, take my drawing off. That 5 chord that I've circled is really, really important, that it's a dominant 7, a G7 rather than G major 7. And the reason that just semantics, the reason we pronounce it as G7 is to separate it. So G major 7 will often be written like this, G dominant 7, just the 7 on its own. All right. So if you ever see just the 7 written next to a chord, think dominant. Okay. And that's the really important function of that chord. 6 is just an A minor with a 7th added. And this one is a half diminished chord. I wouldn't sweat the theory behind this one. If you're into your formula, if you like, it's a first, a flatted third, a flatted fifth, and a flat 7. It kind of blows people's minds a bit, this one, the minor 7, flat 5, because there's so many numbers and letters. But if you think about it, it kind of makes sense, because what we've got is a minor 7. Okay, so minor 7, we know a minor chord is 1, flat 3, and 5. And then a minor 7, as we talked about earlier. You can go through this again later. Don't worry if you don't remember it. But the minor 7 had that flat 7. So minor 7. And then also, look, flat 5. So 1, flat 3, flat 5, flat 7. This is just a nicer way of saying minor 7, flat 5. And we call it a half diminished chord, and that has a similar kind of feel to a diminished chord. We use it a lot in jazz to join together 2-5-1 movements basically as we go. Right, I'm just going to pause there for a second because I feel like I've given you so much information and you've all been so brilliantly quiet, but I really want to know if there's any questions with anything so far, because otherwise it could just be a lot of numbers and letters. I want to make sure that this is all making sense to everyone basically. So we build chords by skipping notes, and that gives us all the different degrees within a scale, and we can either play chords as 3 parts or 4 parts basically. So yeah, exactly. It's that minor third stacked on top of each other, isn't it, Jude, for a diminished? Yeah, absolutely. You got it. So let's see. Just whilst I'm waiting to see if there is any questions coming through, just let me bring a little picture on screen. And just in case anyone's thinking, oh my gosh, this is quite heavy this week, because it is, I won't lie, but I think it's really important to soak it all in. Next live lesson, which is going to be the 3rd of April, so in 2 Wednesdays' time, we're going to take all this information that we've learned this week and last week, and we're going to work out another song by ear. Probably the last live lesson we did 2 weeks ago was probably my favourite live lesson of all time, because we worked out a song in real time, Hours by Taylor Swift, and I could kind of see all these light bulbs going off in the chat. It was really lovely to see, and it's really enjoyable. So what I thought is we'll take a look at Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen, and we'll do exactly the same thing. Okay, I haven't worked it out in advance. I'm going to give you some worksheets to help you work it out, and I'm going to talk you through it, which would be great. I'm also going to develop a special worksheet for this one, where it's lots of blanks that you can fill in, so you can use it to help you work out any song by ear. So I'll be going through that, and it even has little gaps where you can put in suggested picking patterns and strum patterns. So I think you're going to really enjoy that. The reason I chose Hallelujah, which I thought would be quite interesting, is because it's that sweet tune where Leonard Cohen actually references some of the chords he's building. You know, like that lovely bit where it goes the fourth, the fifth, the major chord, and the minor chord and the major lift. So it's kind of like he's explaining the chords as he goes, which is really fantastic. So we're going to use that to actually work out the chords, which is really, really nice. Oh, don't worry, Anne. Don't worry. Now, I always say with this stuff, and this is really, really important, that I think people tend to get stuff. Some people get stuff straight away like that. I never work like that. To get a lot of this music theory kind of in my brain, particularly a lot of the jazz theory, which gets quite heavy, I used to watch YouTube videos just like again and again. And I'm not kidding. Normally it's like by the 6th or 7th time I watch them, suddenly, ding, light bulbs will come on and you think, that makes sense. Like I see what's happening there. So feel free to watch it through as many times as you want. Most important thing is just think chords are built by skipping notes. And when you do that, you come up with these set of chords in any key. And that's our palette that we use to create pieces of music from. Might be quite nice to do that in a second. Have a look at actually building a piece of music from some of these, which would be nice. Right, got a couple of questions to come through. So the minor 7th, because it's the interval from F sharp or F. Let me just bring that up a second. There we go. Was that the D minor 7? Yeah, it would be the D minor 7, wouldn't it? Yeah, okay. Let me explain that, Shao, because that's a really great question, and I love questions like this because it gives me an example of how to build it. When you think about chords in terms of minor 7ths and things like that, the easiest way is to compare them to their home key. I'll show you what I mean. So that's a D chord. Let's compare it to a D major key. We always compare things back to the major key. And the D major scale looks like this. So we've got D, E, there's an F sharp in the D major scale, G, A, B, and there's also a C sharp at the end. All right. So remember when we built that D minor earlier, you don't have to remember this, I'll tell you. The notes that made up a D minor chord were D, F, and A. Okay, 1, 3, and 5. That's your triad. And yeah, so there we go. So what have I done wrong here? D, yeah, that's cool. That's it. So, I just realised that. Do you know what? Karen, the reason why you weren't seeing what I was writing earlier was because I hadn't clicked on the right thing. I just did it then and I realised, duh, sorry. you just read my mind, Karen. I just realised what I'd done. That's why you couldn't see my writing. Silly Matt. Okay. So this is what I was writing out. This is our D major scale. Okay, D major scale. And Shell was asking, why is the D minor a D minor? Was it because of the F and the F sharp? And he's dead right. So in the key of D major, the 3rd note should be an F sharp. You just have to know that. You can work out these major keys using formulas. We can always look at that another time. But because it's an F rather than an F sharp, we call that a flatted 3rd. That's your interval. The other way to think about it is that major 3rds are 2 whole steps. okay? And a whole step means 2 note. And a minor third is 1.5 whole steps, or a whole and a half step, you can think about it. We can see that D, if we wrote out all the notes in the world, this is literally every note in the world. A D to F, look, is a whole and a half, okay? So that's a minor third. Whereas if I did this, if I did a C major chord, where we had this C major interval, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, C major is 2 whole steps for that first bit. So that's the difference between the major third. And the kind of a similar thing happens again. And I'm going to keep on with this just for a second, because look at this one here. The 7, when we did a D minor 7 earlier, it was D, F, A and C. But notice that 7th should be a C sharp. So that's why we call it a 1, a flat 3, a 5 and a flat 7, if that makes sense. A lot of scribbling there, but hopefully that makes sense. So you can kind of think of it 2 ways. Think about comparing it back to its major key and adding the flats, or think about just, is it a minor third or a major third? Major third, as I say, 2 whole steps. Minor third, and 1.5 steps. Okay. Oh, thanks, Rebecca. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, it's gone a bit heavy this week. I realise this is, as I'm doing it, I'm thinking this is quite heavy, isn't it? But hopefully most of you are following. We can always go, you can always go through it sometime later. So, and yeah, Lisa, that's one of the main things from today. Absolutely. When we form any chord, that's what we always do. We skip notes and create them. Well, it is and it isn't. That's how we create the natural chords that come up in a key. These are the ones that composers have used for years and years and years. And these are the ones that a lot of classical music is built upon. So the natural chords, which we have a word for that, diatonic, from the scale. That means basically in posh language. We always skip a note. But in your sheets, let's just take a rest from all these numbers and stuff just for a second and go back to your sheets. Then we get all these other types of chords. Let me just see. Let me just bring that back up. Fantastic. And I've got to make sure I'm actually on the thing so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so that explains all the natural chords, all the diatonic chords that come up in any key. Basically, we're just skipping all these notes. But as I say in my sheets, what about all those other chords? What about things like an augmented chord or a suspended chords? Well, what happens with those chords is they're a real human construct. Someone's decided to basically muck about with those diatonic chords, and we move some of the numbers about, we move some of the notes about to kind of give them different flavours, basically. So let's have a look at those, for instance. So what we can do is we can add extra notes. All right. Oh, gotcha, Shell. No, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Oh, Barbara, yeah, don't worry. You can always Barbara's printed off in black and white. A lot of this you'll see the red marks, makes it a lot easier. So yeah, you can always print those off later and just concentrate on the screen for now, Barbara. That'd be absolutely fine. All right. Yeah, that Shell, same thing applies. So you've got that minor third in the 7th chord as well. Yeah, cool. So 6th chords then, we take any kind of chord, and you can make either a minor chord or a major chord a 6. If you've ever heard of a C6, this is all we're talking about, for instance. And all you do is you take the major triad, that just means that basic 3-part chord, the 1, 3, 5. Here's an example. There's our major triad, and you just add the 6th note of the scale. So that's all a 6th chord is. So the example I've got here, if we want to build a C6, okay, have I written it down somewhere? No, I haven't, so I'll just draw it out for you. Let's draw it out. Okay, so the 1, 3, 5 in the key of C, let's draw it on here, okay, is C, E, and G. 1, 3, 5. And to turn a C into a C6, we literally just add the 6th note as well. So a C6 is C, E, G, and A. All right. A C minor 6 would be exactly the same thing, but we'd have that minor third. We just have that E flat as the same. And let's just have a look at a C6 on a uke. I love 6 chords. They're really cool and jazzy sounding. Most easiest 6 chord of all is C6, isn't it? Because it's just all of your open strings. C, E, G, and A. And sixth chords are often used for a real jazzy feel. So a real famous jazz progression, D minor 7, G7. And I could end with C major. But if I add the C6 on the end instead, slightly cooler sounding, right? They kind of have a real kind of wistful, cool, jazzy quality to them, which is really, really lovely. Let's keep exploring these man-made chords then, if you like, because we've got more of them. What about a suspended chord? And hopefully this is where it all starts getting demystified for you. And again, this comes up a lot in Can a Cappella, doesn't it? Adding like these suspended chords in, for instance. So suspended chords add a feel of movement, a bit like adding salt and pepper to your chords. Well, what are suspended chords? Well, they take a normal major triad, like a C major chord. That's just a C chord, C, E, and G, which, as we know, was built on 1, 3, 5 from our scale. That would be the notes in between, 1, 3, and 5, C, E, and G. Okay. And what they do is they take this third note here, the E in a C chord, for example, and they suspend it or move it down to the 2 chord for a C sus2. So a C sus2 would be C, D, and G. All right, so instead of an E, we've got a D. Or it pushes it the other way to the 4th note of a key. So C, F, and G. Those add a kind of a sense of movement in place. So one of the most common suspended chords is you take a C chord, which looks like this, and we add that F note, the 4th note. Here's the 3rd note, E. We change it to an F, the 4th note in the key of C. C, D, E, F, that's the 4th note. C, C sus 4. C, C sus 4. They're used a lot in kind of rock and roll. So Keith Richards famous for using these sus chords. He does things like this. That's the start of Start Me Up by the Rolling Stones. I'm just doing a C major chord and then adding a C sus 4. Start me up, start me up, I'm ready to go. I can't remember the words. Start me up. Isn't that cool? And that's all a suspended chord is. I kind of like to think about it using my hands sometimes. Like if I do that, like 1, 3, 5, it's like the 3 note has been moved back to 2 or up to 4. That's a suspended 4th chord. Cool, right? Really, really neat, that one. What about an more augmented chord? You've probably heard of an augmented chord before. What is an augmented chord? Well, that's really simple. We take the 5th note of a chord and we sharpen it. So again, let's stick with our C chords as an example. That would be our C major chord, we know. It's the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th in the key of C. And basically, we take the 5th note and we sharpen it. So that would be a G sharp instead. So is C augmented is C, E, and G sharp. And an augmented can be written like this, aug. It could be written as a sharp 5, that means augmented as well. Or even if you see a cross next to a chord, that can be an augmented as well. And these are about adding even more tension to a chord. I love an augmented chord. So Here's a C major chord. Here's a G sharp up here, because we've got G string. This is the second fret, first fret along, which is a G sharp. So C, C augmented. And augmented, I kind of think about like James Bond chords. If I put them in this chord phrase, listen to this. Kind of feels a bit James Bondy, doesn't it? It kind of ratchets up the tension, which is really nice. There's a famous phrase in, you know, It's My Party as well. That has an A augmented. It's my party and I'll cry if I want to. See how that builds on the A? There's the A. It's my party, A augmented. Cry if I want to, cry if I want to, cry if I want to. So literally, an augmented chord is just any major triad, 1, 3, 5, and the fifth note is sharpened. And that's what all these types of chords are. When you've got a word after a chord, so it's not a major or a minor, and it's not a number like a 7, that means it's been, you can think of it as an altered chord. We've taken a standard diatonic natural chord and we've altered it. So suspended is an example, augmented is another example. So that's another type of chord. What about longer chords? So far we've looked at 3-part chords and 4-part chords. Oh, don't worry, Pam, just kind of absorb what you can, and you might get a little bit of use out of it, but you can always go back to the start to watch it. As soon as we finish, you can go back to the start at any point. And I think this is one of those videos, guys, where you might find a lot of rewinding will help anyway. Yay, Karen's back. Good stuff, good stuff. So far we've looked at 3-part chords and 4-part chords. Have you ever heard of like a 9th chord or a 13th chord? What about those? Yeah, Mamma Mia, here I go again. The ma is a major, the mi is an augmented, right? Mamma Mia. It's got that kind of feel to it. So yeah, well spotted, G. Yeah, that's a perfect example of augmented chords. Really, really nice. Okay. So let's have a look at what these longer chords mean. Now, these get a little bit crazy. I'm going to bring my sheet back on here for an example of extended dominant chords. So like, what does a 9th mean, or 11th, or a 13th? And you might think, well, scales, surely our major scales only have 7 notes, right? Because when you get to the 7th note, it goes back to the start again. So our C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, right? And then we could just start again. You can think of this as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It just starts again, right? But if you think about a piano, this is where I wish I had one in front of me now. If you think about a piano, those notes after you get to the end of a scale, so if you took a section of a piano, it keeps going, doesn't it? And the notes, even though they're the same, you go C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and you can keep doing it. They go an octave higher. They're still the same notes, but they've gone right through the scale and out the other side. We call that an octave when we go from here to here, when you've gone right the way through the scale. Now, jazz musicians, they love to add even more notes to a chord. So, for instance, a 9th chord, if you ever see, say, C9, a 9th chord is the 1st, the 3rd, look, I'm skipping notes, the 5th. Because it's a type of dominant, it has the flatted 7th. It's just something that we like to use in blues and jazz. By flattening that 7th, it gives it a kind of that dominant feel. And then it also has the 9th, which you can think of that as the 2. Okay, so a C9 actually has 5 notes in it. Crazy, right? It's that simple. A C11 would have 6 notes in it because it has all of those. A lot of people think of a C11 as just a C chord with the 11th added, but it also has these ones that we've gone through as well. A C13, believe it or not, what? Has 7 notes in it. Now, on a piano, that's fine, right? Because you've got 10 digits. You can easily play 7 notes at the same time on the piano if you use 2 hands. On ukulele, we run into a problem. Even on guitar, we run into a problem because there's only 6 strings on guitar. But on ukulele, we run into a problem, don't we? That we've only got 4 strings. So what do we do for these long extended chords? Well, we have to be a little bit clever about it. We can't play all of the notes, so we need to lose some. And I talk about this on the next one, which ones do we lose? Basically, as long as you keep certain notes within a chord, it can still just about work. Let's think about the notes that we need to keep. Well, the notes that you have to keep if you're naming a chord after one is the one that is mentioned. So if I'm playing a C13, I've got to include the 13th note, right? Because if I don't include the 13th note, there we go. Ah, yeah, that's all right. The only reason I paused there, Guy, was that Barbara, obviously sometimes the comments get a little bit behind. You've read my mind, Barbara. You've read my mind. Okay, so because if I'm playing a C13, I've got to keep the 13th, otherwise I can't call it a C13, right? So that's one that I want to keep. What other notes out of all of these do I want to keep if I'm playing it on a 4-stringed instrument? The next most common one that we want to keep is this one, the 7th. Why do we want to keep the 7th note in there? Well, remember earlier, the 7th tells you whether a chord is a major 7th or it fits the flatted 7, a dominant 7. So that's really important, okay? So a C major 7 has a B in it, a C dominant 7 has a B flat in it. So that's really important, this 7th. We've got to keep this one in here, so that's really important. We need to know whether a chord's dominant or not. The next most important note that we need to keep is the 3, because the 3 tells you whether a chord is major or minor. Remember, C major has an E in it, a C minor, that's replaced with an E flat. So that's really important as well. Now the others are kind of fair game. The 5 doesn't really give us any information at all. It just sits there, we call it perfect fifth, doesn't really change. These ones, bit of salt and pepper, you can add them if you want. Sometimes we can even get rid of the root. It's kind of important because it tells us what key we're in, but you could get rid of the root in a chord and it can still sound right, and we often do that. As long as you keep the 3rd, the 7th, and whatever the chord is named, so C13 you keep the 13, C11 you keep the 11, that's fine, and that's what we have to do. So when we play extended chords on the uke, we haven't got all of those notes. So I'll give you an example actually. Let's play a C9 on our ukulele. Oh my gosh, I was just looking at that page. Honestly, if anyone's just tuned in and they saw that, they'd think I'd gone completely mad. I'm so sorry, guys. I hope you're still following. It's like we've got Einstein today. Let's have a look at a C9 chord just to prove it. This is a C9 chord. You don't have to know how to do it. I'll show you. So this is a C7. This is a C9 chord. Let's have a look at the notes that I've got in this one. So, have I got the 9th? Because I said it was really important that we keep the one it's named after. So have I got the 9th in there? Let's have a look. Yep, there it is. There's that D note, the 9th. Okay. What other notes have I got? I've got this B flat here. Which one is that? That's the 7th. And because it's a B flat, it's a dominant 7th. So I've got that 7 that I mentioned is really important. What else have I got? I've got an E. Let's check which one that was. I've got an E. Yep, that's brilliant. That's the one that tells me whether it's a major or a minor. And because I've got an E rather than an E flat, I know that it's a form of, it's got a major third, so it's not a minor 9, C minor 9, it's a C9. Okay, so that was that one there. And then finally, I've got a G, which is, that's the 5th one. So could have it, could not have it. It just makes it easy to play on the ukulele. So when we play a C9 on uke, we're not even playing a C note. We're not even playing the note that the chord is built from, the number 1. So that's what we have to do with 4-part chords. There's actually a little trick which is quite useful. If you want to turn any 7th chord into a 9th, just find the root note of the chord, so a C in this case, and play the fret 2 to the right of it. So C7, C9. I've turned this C into a D. The reason that works is because the 9, the D, is 1 note over from that root, so a D is 2 frets over from a C. Don't worry too much about the theory of that. But there we go. That was absolutely nuts. Sorry, guys. Just in terms of that page, just looking back on it, it's quite mad. There's one other chord that I just wanted to talk about. Oh, we've got a question. Yay! Let's have a look. Now this is a great question. Yeah. So is the 13th note an A played higher on the fretboard to be the octave higher? You can do, but most of the time we substitute it for an octave lower, Rebecca. And I know you might think, well, shouldn't we then call that the 6 rather than the 13? We still name it the 13 because that's the kind of chord that we're aiming towards is that 13th. But because otherwise it just ends up with like crazy stretchy chords, we do tend to play that the same octave as the other note. But piano players will play it higher. Piano players, because they can reach it quite comfortably, they'll play that octave higher. So really good question, Rebecca. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, really good idea. Really good idea to learn those notes on the fretboard. It kind of helps it all become a lot clearer, doesn't it? And those tricks like turning a 7th into a 9th, they're really handy. One more thing I wanted to play to explain, because there's one more really common type of chord, and that's an add chord. I'll bring this up on screen as well, so an add chord. Now, it's really important when we talk about add chords that we're not talking about this symbol. Whenever you see that symbol, such as C, add, that's not actually add. It looks like it should be, but that actually means augmented. So if you see a plus sign, it doesn't mean add, it means augmented, which we learned earlier meant to sharpen the 5. Whenever you see an add, it will actually physically be written in like that, 3 letters. Okay, C add, and then whatever note it is. Okay. The important reason to differentiate between a C add and a C9 is that it doesn't contain all of the notes that build up to it. So here we've got a really nice clear example down here. So a C9, I'm going to write out the scale again here just to make this really messy. D, E. So a C9, look here, contains this one, look, we're skipping notes, this one played as a flat because it's dominant, don't worry too much about that. And then this one. So a C9 has 5 notes in it because it does include this one here. A C add 9 is different. A C add 9, you take a standard chord, such as a bog standard C major, and you add the 9th note. You don't have that 7th note in there. C add 11, you would add the 11th note, F. So C add 11 would be C, E, G, and F. So it's a differentiation from just the letter without the add. That's really, really important. And I think I've got another example here, actually, if I scroll up a bit. There you go, C13, look at that. C13 has all of these notes in it. The 1st, the 3rd, the 5th, the flatted 7th, the 9th, the 11th and the 13th, because we've included all those notes that we've skipped over. Whereas a C add 13 doesn't, it's just the major chord with that one added. All right, just a little differentiation there, because again, it's another chord that is that will come up occasionally. And basically, I know that sounds crazy, but that's it in effect. This is really what I wanted to show you. So you've got your diatonic chords. Those are your natural ones that come up, majors and minors. You've got your 4-part diatonic chords. That just means we've taken the major or the minor and we've added a 7th onto it. Then we've got suspended, where we've wiggled the 3 either side. We've got augmented, we've taken a 5th and we've sharpened it. And we've got the long chords like 9ths and 13ths where we've added them. And that's basically how we get all these different types of chords. And each one has a kind of a different feel to it, which is really great. So if we bring this back full circle, which is really important, and I'm going to bring my sheets back, but I'm going to go right back now to the start, almost the start. So we started by building all these diatonic chords, right, where we just played a note, we skipped one and we played another, and that gave us this, our diatonic chords in the key of C. So now, guys, hopefully if I've done this right, and I know I've gone quickly and you might have to watch it a few times, now you know why this chord is a C. Why is this a D minor? Why is this an E minor? Why is this an F, and so on and so forth? So that gives us our palette of chords that we can use. And imagine that's what an artist does. When you take a song in any key, these are the chords that they're going to build it from. All right, the diatonic. And they'll make a discipline poptastic or 4-part chords that have a more special feel. Or are they going to take some of those spicy chords where they've changed them around? And that's what they do. So I won't do too much of this because I want to have a look at this next week when we do Hallelujah. But just as an example, Leonard Cohen has decided, right? Actually, no, I'm not going to do that one because it will ruin the surprise for next time. Let's take Taylor Swift. I was playing that little bit from her song hours earlier. Taylor Swift has decided, I'm going to write a song in the key of C because that suits my voice. Okay, well, these are my palette. These are the chords that I'm going to use. And if I want to start off, I'm going to use the home chord because it makes me feel settled. I'm going out on a journey. And that's what she does. So we have a C chord at the start of that song. Then she decides, okay, I've used a major chord. I don't want this song being too kind of too saccharine. So I want to get the sadness of a minor chord in. Okay, I'm going to use either this one, or this one, because these are my 3 minor chords in this key. And Taylor Swift decided to use this one. Okay, it follows on really nicely from a C chord and A minor because there's only 1 note difference between the 2 chords. So she started with this one. It's all right, James. And she went to this A minor. Then she thought, okay, I've gone through major to minor. I've gone from happy to sad. I want to make sure things don't get too crazy sad. So I'm going to finish off that phrase. I'm going to put the 4 chord in, which is F. And that's exactly what she did. Elevator buttons in the morning air. Stranger silence makes me want to take the stairs. If you were here, we'd laugh about their vacant stairs. But right now, then she thought, I want a bit of a change. I want the tension. And this chord here, the 5 chord, is all about creating an element of tension. So she puts that in. Da, 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 da. And then actually she goes back to the 4 chord after that. And that's it. That's how she came up with her verse. So now you know how all these chords have come into existence. And that's the chords that people use to write songs with, which is really nice. Now, just to finish off, just before we finish off completely, I'm going to stick around for any questions, but I just wanted to go back to this page one more time. I'm going to see if I can clean it up a bit, take away some of these things, because I wanted to show you something quite cool with these chords. Each one of these chords in any key has their own personality. And this is what we're going to look into more detail next next time. So composers won't just randomly place these together. Every one of these chords has a personality. So the one chord in any key makes you feel at home. This one sets you off on a journey, and when we do Canna-Capilla, you see that so many songs start with this chord, don't they? Really kind of sets you off on a journey. The two chord I like to call the pop-tastic. Don't worry about writing all this down because I've got this written out as a proper sheet for the next live lesson when we do Hallelujah. But if you are interested, the two chord I call the poppy minor. It makes you want to go to either the 3 chord or the 5 chord. It's just its function. And if you play it relatively quickly, you don't linger on it, it doesn't sound too dark, even though it's a minor chord. It's used a lot in bebop songs. Blue moon. There it is. Oh, sorry. Blue moon. Here it comes in. You make me feel da da da. Here it is. Without a dream in my heart. See, it doesn't sound too sad. Without a love of my own. So I like to call that the pop-tastic minor. This chord, the 3 chord, is our heartbreak chord. This one sounds really sad in any key. So if I go from C to E minor, that has a kind of a sad feel to it. Feel how sad that chord feels. And every one of these has a personality. The 4 chord you hear me mention in Canna-Capilla all the time has a sense of change. It's not too dramatic, it just has a sense of change. And the 4 chord tends to want to lead back to 1 or up to 5. That's the 2 most common things that happen with the 4 chord. And you get it at the start of folk music. So you might get a C chord, the 1 chord. Then it needs a bit of change. 4 chord. C chord. 4 chord. So that one I like to call the change chord. Then this one, we use this for tension. So whenever you hit that 5 chord, it makes you want to go back to 1 again. So if I could be noodling around, when I hit this one, G, it makes me want to go back to the start, right? So that's all about tension. I'll just go through last 2, so we've done all of them. This one I like to think of as melancholy chord. This one is interesting. This one they often call Leonard Cohen in Hallelujah calls this the minor fall. It creates a kind of a sense of minor movement, often following on from the 4 chord or leading into the 4 chord, the minor fall and the major lift. So it's just a touch of melancholy. It's not as sad as the 3 chords, so I think about it as melancholy. And finally this one, this is our jazz chord, which can be used for jazz music, or it can be used to bridge the gap between certain passages of music. So every one of those chords has a personality. So now that's really, really powerful. I'm going to put down my uke now so I can gesture at you because I really want you to take all this stuff in. You know how those chords are built, which I think is really, really interesting, just by skipping notes in the scale. You know the ones that create the musical palette now, which come up in any key. You could replicate this in any key, and I think it'd be great practice to do so later on. So you could try this in the key of F, see if you can work out all the chords that come up in the key of F and so on. And then if you understand that those 7 chords are your palette that you're going to compose with, each one has its own personality that we looked at here. That means that you could write your own songs, you can understand other people's songs. It's really, really fantastic, isn't it? So I've just got another question come in. So chord voicing, sometimes I get confused what it means. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is, Karen, chord voicings. It's just chords played in a different place. So you can play chords in multiple different places as long as they've got the same notes in them. You just end up that different notes fall on different strings. I'll give you a nice example. So let's say, actually I'm going to pick up my uke. Let's say, what should we go for? G7. Okay, G7 chord. Now we know the notes that made up our G7 chord. If I go back here, I've got them somewhere. Here we are. Where was it? Where's the G7? Back here. Went too far. I need the 4-part version. Sorry guys, made that. There it is. Okay. So the notes that make up a G7 are G, B, D, and F. And you can see that we've just skipped through those. There they are, G, B, D, and F. We've just skipped through them. That's how they've been built. So basically, any combination anywhere on the fretboard where I have a G, here's one, a B, here's a B, a F, and yeah, that's it. I've done all of them. Did it? I think I skipped over D. So any combination of G, B, D, and F is going to be a G7 chord. So have a look at this. The reason this sounds different is because it's a different voicing, because I have a high D instead of a low D. This one has a high D. But look at the notes that I'm playing here, right? This note here is a B. G, A, B. So there's my B note. Okay, there's the B note. Let's have a look at what the note on this string is. This one here. This one is an F. No, it's not. Yeah, it is. Sorry, I've crushed myself then. C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F. There it is. F. Okay. I'll go back to the shape again. This one here is a G. There's the G. And then this one down here, a D. D there. So this is a G7 as well. It's just the notes are in different order on different strings. Still a perfectly valid G7. I could even do this. Okay. So now I have to really think about this. So we've got D, E, F, G. G up there. The note on this one, D, E, F, G. So, and so on and so forth. Look, we'd have A, B, sorry, what am I doing here? Sorry, G, A here. This would be a B. And then finally, this one here is an F, C, D, E, F. Again, just those notes in a different order. It's brilliant. So you can play a G7 here, like that, here like that, and here like that. Cool, right? So those are, to answer your questions, Karen, those are all different voicings. The notes are in a different order going from lowest to highest, and they sound different because of the place you played them on the fretboard. And that's really powerful. You can play them all in all different positions. And it's the same with any chord. F chord can be played like that, can also be played up here. It's brilliant, and those are just all different voicings. So fantastic. Right, now we're going to wind down. You can relax now. Whew, you've taken all that in. You can digest as much or as little as you want. Next week, I'm super excited. As I say, we're going to really going to put this stuff to the test. I'm super excited about it. So I'm going to show you how to apply this to work out the song. Not next week, the week after, to work out the song Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen, one of my favourite songs of all time. we're gonna do it in real time. I'm not gonna prepare it, I'm not gonna write down the chords and then magically reveal them. We're gonna work out what chords are in that song by first getting them into that palette of 7 chords, then thinking about chord personalities. We're gonna listen to the record in real time. Think, is this the 1 chord setting us off on the journey? Does it have tension? So could it be the 5 chord? Is it major or minor? Is it happy or sad? And we'll start to build those notes, and we'll start to see these minor thirds and major lifts and these kind of things within the song. It's going to be really, really exciting. You'll see how we piece it together. And as I say, the sheets are well worth it, because I'm going to give you some resources, including some blank tabs for putting finger picking patterns. And I'm going to show you how to work out the time signature as well. And you'll be able to write in your own little finger picking patterns and your own strum patterns and things like that. It's going to be a blank sheet, so you can do it for any song. So it's going to be really, really good fun. Something that you can use for lots and lots of other things as we go. All right, I'll just see if there's any other questions, and then I think I'll sign off for today, and we'll have a look at the stuff on Hallelujah in 2 weeks' time. Let me tell you about a couple of things coming up. Don't forget that every Monday we've got a Can a Cappella where we put some of this stuff in action. It won't be heavily on theory like this, you'd be pleased to know, as a relief. We get playing. So all of the stuff we've learned, we put into practice. So we learn to play by ear, basically. And we have chord charts, and we have loads of fun songs, basically, and have loads of fun getting together. So that's every Monday, and the next one is going to be this Monday coming up next, which is going to be fantastic. If anyone's into the baritone ukulele, just to let you know, I've done a new lesson. It's not this one actually, it's on chord melody playing, so I'll just bring up the general one. So there's a new baritone lesson coming tomorrow that will be available if anyone's following those ones, and I'll also have a UTLC one coming up as well, which is great. Another thing some of you might have already seen on my channel, on my website, I've created a brand new resource which I'm like super excited to share with you. I've taken 60 arrangements, tablature and chordal, and I've put them up there for members. So if you're a subscriber, it's £8 or £10 a month. You guys have got the access to all of those arrangements, and I'm going to add to it all the time. There's going to be new arrangements on there. Today I was even adding some kind of little useful things. So there's things like the circle of fifths on there, chord shapes you can take up and down the fretboard, scales and things like that. So that's all a new resource now on mattsteadukulele.com. You'll find it under the Learn tab, which I'm really excited about. So yeah. Oh, that's great, Charlene. Fantastic. Yeah, you got it. G major 7 has the normal 7. G7 has the flatted 7, so we call it dominant. And then G minor 7 has the minor interval at the start. So yeah, that's what we want. That's what we want. Fantastic. Even if you just get a little snippet from these lessons, that's absolutely fantastic. Just in case anyone was new this week, they're not always anywhere near as heavy as this. This is one I kind of felt like I really wanted to do, because I really wanted to explain the nuts and bolts of the stuff that we're going to be doing. And then in 2 weeks' time, we'll put it into practice, and we'll have loads of fun actually learning a song with this stuff, which I think would be great. So yeah, fantastic. Yeah, me too, Barbara. I'm going to go and lie down in a darkened room now. I'm not really. I think I'm going to open a window and see if I can hear those chiff-chaffs. All right then, guys. Well, I shall love you and leave you. I'll see you on Monday for another Can a Cappella. And we'll be back for another live lesson in 2 weeks' time on April the 3rd. You take care, everyone, and you can. Cheers. Bye.